Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this IWF Policy Chat. My name is Ginny Gentles, and I'm the director of the Education Freedom Center at Independent Women's Forum. The Independent Women's Forum is the leading national women's organization dedicated to developing and advancing policies that aren't just well-intended, but actually enhance people's freedom, opportunities, and well-being. At IWF's Education Freedom Center, we are committed to informing and empowering parents. If you're not familiar with the Education Freedom Center, after this event, please go visit our webpage at iwf.org/EFC and be sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Defender, to keep up with all things education. I am very pleased to be joined today by two education freedom advocates for a discussion about the future of the education freedom movement. Nikki Neely is the president and founder of Parents Defending Education, a nonpartisan, nonprofit national organization giving parents the resources and support they need to advocate for their children's education. Nikki will talk about all the work that her organization is doing today. Nikki previously served as leader of Speech First, another organization she founded, a national campus free speech organization. Tiffany Justice is the co-founder of Moms for Liberty, a grassroots organization formed last year that now has chapters in at least 35 states. Moms for Liberty is dedicated to unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. Tiffany is a wife and mom of 4 school-aged children. She served for 4 years on the Indian River County, Florida School Board, and she believes that students deserve innovation and parents have the right to know the union interference and government bureaucracy that is keeping that innovation from happening in their school district. Nikki and Tiffany, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having us.
So, Nikki, let's start with a little bit about your organization. I found this description of Parents Defending Education, but I feel like it applies to what both of you are doing. It says, in recent years, K-12 schools, both public and private, have been targeted by activists seeking to politicize education, impose toxic new curriculum, and treat our kids not as individuals to nurture and respect, but as members of identity groups to enlist in divisive new causes. Unfortunately, most parents remain silent about their concerns because they fear that if they speak out, their child might face repercussions. So Parents Defending Education, also Moms for Liberty, are educating and empowering families to push back. So I do hope that the focus of our discussion is on education freedom today, but let's start with what's going on in many public and some elite private schools today. Why are activists targeting children, and why are parents afraid to speak up? Nikki, let's start with you on that.
Sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of money and there's power involved in this, sadly. And I think that's something that many of us didn't really realize until all the lockdowns began, was that our children are not first and foremost in the minds of educators and the education establishment. They're very concerned about maintaining their grip on things. When schools suddenly were in people's living rooms because of Zoom school, I think a lot of parents were rightly horrified by the kinds of things they were seeing and hearing because they had no idea that what was taking place in school now is vastly different than what many of us grew up with. And when we tried to raise concerns about that, say that we wanted our schools reopened, say that we, had some questions about some of the material, it was very obvious that there is no aspect of the consent of the governed. They want us to keep our mouths shut. They want us to stay away. I am actually still not able to enter my children's elementary school because of COVID. They're used to operating under cover of darkness, using our tax dollars against us. And so parents over the past year, 2 years have really realized that, and they're starting to fight back. And so we want to give them both the knowledge about what their rights are and how the system is structured so that they can be better advocates for their children and for their families.
So Tiffany, Moms for Liberty is doing similar work. Can you speak to what you all are doing? And can you speak a little bit to why parents have been afraid to speak up?
Yeah, what we saw during COVID was kind of a peek behind the education curtain. As Nikki said, parents got to see what their kids were learning or not learning, and we were very concerned. And so Moms for Liberty decided that we were going to take a very grassroots approach. Ended my school board term November of 2019. 2020, sorry. The years are now either flying by or crawling slowly. And then in January of 2021 started Moms for Liberty. And so we're set up by chapter across the country. We now have 197 chapters in 37 states. We continue to grow. And really, it was just about this movement of parents that recognized, as Nikki said, that things were not right. And when we wanted to have our voices heard, as we believed we should, school districts were worried about every aspect of what they did except for taking into consideration, the primary stakeholders, which are the parents and the kids. And so we needed a voice that was as loud, if not louder, than the unions. And we needed a seat at the table. And we have always said, if a seat was not created for us, we'll bring our own chair. And we continue to do that on every school, in every school district, in all the way up to the federal government. So, just kind of building the airplane as we fly it, but recognizing that there was a need to bring parents together.
So, Tiffany, a little bit more about Moms for Liberty and your focus on liberty. What are the biggest threats to liberty and parental rights in public education right now? There's so many, it feels like, but what are the biggest?
No, I think that COVID did kind of reveal to parents again that, things that parents felt that they had some control over with their children, especially when they were at school, we were really ignored. And that when we brought concerns forward, we were told that there were a lot of other considerations to take into place instead of our own. And so we recognize at Moms for Liberty that parents have the fundamental right, that's a natural right that the government does not give you, they cannot take it away, to direct the upbringing of your children. And that is their medical care, that is their education, that is their morals and values, and the parent should be steering that ship. And so, again, putting parents into the driver's seat. And we, as you said before about school choice, we are big proponents of school choice. We believe that parents are the best expert of their own children, and that there need to be lots of different options so that parents can make sure that their children are getting what they need from school. And that's not a conversation that gets to happen without the parent.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So Moms for Liberty welcomes all who have a desire to stand up for parental rights at all levels of government. What does standing up for parental rights look like in practice? I testified at a congressional hearing this morning, and parents were not painted in a pretty light. You all know the stereotypes, like these parents who are speaking up are essentially domestic terrorists, and how could they? So obviously parents should not be domestic terrorists. That's not what they should do, but they should be speaking up at school board meetings for sure. What else? What else should they be doing?
I mean, I would pitch this to Nikki. What we have seen is every way, shape, and form that citizen input could be limited in school districts, at school board meetings. We have seen citizen input being cut from meetings completely, being limited down from 3 minutes to 1 minute. There being lottery systems. Sometimes parents are being told they can't wear any writing on their shirts. I know they love to see those Moms for Liberty shirts, but I mean, come on. So, I would really ask Nikki, we have seen very directly, parents have seen a threat to our First Amendment rights. Not every time you go before the school board is it going to be rainbows and butterflies. You're not there just to make them feel good. I know they want you to, but when you look at a school district and they only have 30% of kids reading on grade level, parents rightly should be asking questions. Taxpayers should be asking questions, and that speech, even though it may not always be welcome, is protected.
So, Nikki, what else should parents be doing in addition to ensuring that they keep speaking up at school board meetings? What does Parents Defending Education encourage parents to do?
Sure. We are big fans of public records requests. Somewhat strangely, schools are not very forthcoming in what they're teaching children, how they're teaching children, what they're teaching teachers on their in-service, professional development days. We should know those things. Again, this is being paid for with our tax dollars. And when we get public records requests back, we're often shocked. It's insult to injury that things are being taught to our children are being treated in different ways, against our consent with our money. How dare you? And so we want to know that. We file tons of public records requests. We try and teach and encourage people to file their own, to hold their officials accountable for how they spend their money, for how they spend their time. Let's think about the astonishing learning loss that has happened over the past 2 years. Astonishing. And, you have a finite amount of money. You have, frankly, finite time. You have my children for 7 hours a day. How are you spending that time? Are we making up the reading and the writing and the mathematics instruction? Or are we spending 3 or 4 hours a day on social justice programming, and activism that's not helping my child get back to grade level? Those are things that we deserve to know. And so, we push for that kind of information to get out there into the public domain so that the community writ large knows and can hold elected officials accountable. But then also we encourage, we file complaints with the Office of Civil Rights on a pretty regular basis when students' rights are being violated, when children are being treated differently on the basis of immutable characteristics, on the basis of race, on the basis of sex. You may not do that in a taxpayer-funded education institution. And it happens, sadly, all too frequently, and that's unacceptable. And finally, we have to sue the bad guys. Let's hold them accountable in the court of law as well as the court of public opinion. I want every teacher in the country, every principal, every superintendent to think, if this handout goes out, if we do this lesson plan, is this going to end up on TV tonight? I want them to think twice before they go ahead with some of the bad behavior that they've been getting away with.
Nikki, can you speak a little bit more about public records request? Tiffany has this great podcast, Joyful Warrior, that I encourage people to listen to. And I was listening to a conversation yesterday where Tiffany mentioned that some of these Moms for Liberty members are filing public records requests and being charged thousands of dollars, or being asked to pay. Obviously, they're not going to pay thousands of dollars. Or Tiffany, I think you gave an example of your own experience where you were allowed to look at the materials that were going to be introduced to your children at school, but only for 15 minutes and only with somebody supervising you. This is just, and these are in states that have open records laws. This is with a federal law that empowers parents to have access to the materials. So when individual parents are filing public records requests, are they always going to be facing these kinds of restrictions and these kind of requests for payments?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely starting to see districts push back because, again, they hate the oversight, they hate the transparency, and so we try to work with parents to, give them some general tips. Cite the name of the law so that they know what you're asking for. Be specific in what you're asking for. Search terms, specific individuals, maybe time horizons, because they'll come back and they'll say, "Oh, it's going to be 10,000 pages. It's going to take us 6 months. It's going to be $45,000." I actually got a response from a district in Massachusetts that literally quoted me $45,000. Right? You know that I'm not going to pay that, and so you're hiding. I mean, this is just another way for you to get around it. That being said, I mean, there are also, we have some tools to fight back. There are 50 state public records laws, which is a little bit of a hassle, and we're more than happy to work people through that. Like in the state of Virginia, you must be a Virginia resident. State of Delaware, you must be a Delaware resident. Different states have different response times. In the state of Virginia, I think they have to acknowledge your request within 5 days. So know those things and then set a reminder for yourself, because sometimes they just conveniently forget about those deadlines. And so just be on them. Know that that you demand this information. But if they come back with, a huge price, a long time horizon, see if you can whittle it down. But I mean, it also kind of shows, I think, that there's blood in the water. There's stuff out there that they do not want you knowing. And I have also found districts that don't turn over all the required materials that they are supposed to, because I have filed cross FOIAs, most notably in the National School Board Association incident, where a district gave me a set of information and then showed that a different district didn't give me everything they should have. Well, that's interesting. That's a violation of state law too. And so we're going through appeals processes in different states. They're going to try and run out the bureaucracy. We're going to out-bureaucratize them. I mean, know your rights, because you have to use them to fight back.
So both of you are such fighters. I love listening to you talk. I love the fact that there's the concrete evidence of what you're doing, Nikki. And we have an indoctrination map that's on the Parents Defending Education website. I feel that this is a powerful visual depiction of your organization's assertion that there are problems everywhere, but there are also people fighting back. And thankfully, Parents Defending Education are helping people fight back. But take a look at this map. This is there is evidence that there are problems everywhere. Tell us a little bit about what ends up on the map, and what people would find if they go to click to their state and find out what's going on in the state.
Sure. We have a tip line. We have people who send us tips from across the country. They can check if they want to be anonymous. And sadly, 99% of people actually do want to be anonymous because, as Tiffany said, they're fearful. They fear retaliation, not only against themselves, but also against their children. And I think it's very valid, right? We're seeing people doxxed. We're seeing people threatened. We're hearing about kids that are maybe not getting as strong of a letter recommendation as they should have. The blob does not like this oversight and parent activism. But people send us, we fact check everything. We ask them to send us a screenshot, send us a PDF, send us a hyperlink, and we'll write it up. We'll take the slings and arrows because this information has to get out there. Community members don't know what's taking place in their backyards. State legislators don't know what's happening in their states. And so, we want to give them ear cover to go and take steps to curb these excesses because this is inappropriate.
So we have another map for Moms for Liberty chapters that have formed over really, Tiffany, what, the last year? Your organization has grown so fast, so quickly, clearly revealing a demand. And so this shows me that women across the country are yearning for fellowship, which is what these chapters are offering, and seeking opportunities to educate and empower themselves and other parents in their community. Where are you seeing the most growth? Tiffany, for
this map is fascinating to us, because what you can see in certain areas is that it does start to spread like wildfire. You'll see a couple chapters next to each other, and it really does catch fire. We're seeing growth really all over the country. We see a growth and adding some new states recently. Hawaii was a state that we just added. What we're seeing is the fact that when parents are watching other parents get involved, and that courage is contagious. So then they think, well, that's something that I could maybe do. And then they contact that chapter and they talk a little bit about it. They talk to us about starting a chapter. And then when you see those chapters and you have certain states, we're starting to see, and we're starting to create the structure and the framework for them. We have the structure, but it's volunteers. It's their choice, right? So what we're encouraging is for them to come together chapter by chapter and to advocate at that state level in a legislative fashion. And so we're hiring state coordinators now. If anyone's watching this and is looking to try to get involved and would like to be involved with us, we just hired a state coordinator in Pennsylvania. We're looking in Georgia, in Michigan. And so want to get leadership so that these moms can be supported and that we can really have recourse. I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you're right, there are federal laws that are supposed to create transparency. Parents are supposed to be able to have access to see what their children are learning. But what we're seeing is that school districts are not being transparent about that, because there is no recourse. There's no teeth in the Pupil Protection Rights Act. There's nothing that we can do to really force their hand on things. And, when you look at why parents don't have trust in the institutions, look at what the institution, the educational complex that Nikki, you just said the blob. Look what's been done. The trust has been broken. We have seen our children put on the back burner. When schools reopened, we got a window into teaching and learning that had completely changed. I have friends who have kids in their early 20s and then maybe had a kid 10 years later, and they'll tell me that the educational experience for those kids is vastly different. And so, it's no question that parents are looking for other options for their children. And the one thing I'll say about school choice here is that a lot of parents had heard about school choice for a long time, Ginny. And when all of this happened with COVID and they were looking for other options, what they found was that there weren't a lot of other options. And even some of the choice options that they might have, private schools, charters, those have been captured as well. And so, the truth is that, we hear a lot of people that talk about public education and school choice. And we believe that the two things, school choice and reforming public education and reclaiming public education really and rebuilding it, have to happen at the same time, and that they'll make each other better. And so, I'm just so excited to be a part of the education freedom movement with you and with Nikki, because you're right, we are fighters. Nikki and I have been through some battles where we learned that we're not breakable and that people can say things to us and do things to us. And we know, and we can really model for moms across the country that, it's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit, but if we work and band together, we're going to get through this.
Yeah, I so appreciate the opportunity to get to know your organizations, get to know you as individuals, and to link arms and work together. And thank you for mentioning school choice here and at this point in our conversation. As I was listening to what you all were describing and the struggles and the battles with the school districts, it was just a real flashback for me to when my school district, which is also Nikki's school district, Arlington Public Schools, insisted on staying closed throughout COVID. I mean, they were one of the longest closures, and there was this small group of parents really working hard to try to get it back open, and they were determined not to open schools again. And it was really hard. I'm a single parent. My kids are really complex. I needed those schools open. I knew that they needed to be back in classrooms. And so I enrolled my children in a small faith-based private school that thankfully is in our community and was available. And everything changed. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful school year. And the transparency that we've been talking about, there are absolutely no issues with that. I have an extra copy of their textbooks at home because they have nightly homework, which is something that's another issue with schools right now. They actually send an extra copy of the math and grammar textbook home. So I know exactly what my kids are learning because I've got it in my hand. So I want to offer out that piece that is possible for parents who can't afford it on their own. But what school choice offers as far as school choice policies is to provide financial assistance to families who can't afford a private school tuition. And Florida is a real model for that. But Tiffany, you make a good point that there's not necessarily a local option available for parents. So we have seen a lot of parents homeschooling. And we have seen a lot of parents leave public schools and try different things like learning pods and micro schools. Do you all think that that's something that's going to stick around? Do you think that as you and your organizations address issues in public schools, those families will come back? Or is it okay if we spread out across all the options?
I think it's great if we spread out. I think, we know our children better than anybody else does. I mean, my 7-year-old and my 6 and my 8-year-old, very different learning styles, very different interests. They thrive in different kinds of classrooms. And so I would love to have more options for them, to put them in something where they could thrive. And so that's why I think, having choice is great. And then I think choice needs to be paired with transparency so that I can make an informed choice over what curriculum is being taught. Does that align with my values? Is this the kind of program structure, that school where my family will fit in? Because I think the worst possible thing would be, all right, great, I pulled my kid out of one school, put them into someplace else. That's an even worse fit. We don't want to do that to people. And conversely, if you have transparency and you don't, but you can't do anything about it because you don't have money, well, that stinks too. And so we want to give parents as many tools as they can to help their children have a terrific outcome.
Right. I think one thing that I want the school choice, the education freedom movement to do is to put the pressure on the public schools so that they recognize, look, if you're going to continue to ignore us as we speak up at school board meetings, if you're going to continue to charge us thousands of dollars when we just ask to see what our kids are learning, then we'll leave. So shape up. And then we won't leave. So the idea is, and it isn't all about exiting the public schools. It's also just warning the public schools, be responsive or there'll be a consequence. So Tiffany, do you think that that's an effective tool for parents to kind of have in their back pocket?
Yeah, as long as they have somewhere to go. And I agree with Nikki. I think school choice only works if you have informed parents making, decisions that, again, they feel good about, that are good decisions for their children, because it's not ideal to move your child from school to school to school to school. That is not in the best interest of your child. And so, parents take very seriously where their children go to school, and schools are a big part of our lives. At Moms for Liberty, we say we will gladly partner with our children's schools, but we do not co-parent with the government. And what we're seeing is that the boundary lines between school and home have been blurred, and parents very badly want to redefine those boundaries. And schools need to respect that. And so I think no matter where your children are going to school, how you are treated and regarded as a parent is of the utmost concern. That should be something that really should help to drive your decision making. I think that no matter what happens, Robert Pondicio, I've heard him say a number of times that the sun will go out before public school in America stops. And so I think you're always going to have a percentage of kids who go to public school. And I'll be honest and say that I think the majority of Americans, if public schools were functional and doing the job with which they are tasked to do, would be okay sending their kids to public school. I think that most parents are fine with that. But what we have seen is that the public schools have lost their mission. And we are now funding failure. And we continue to just throw money at a problem that we have very clearly seen money is not going to solve. And so at this point now, when you're looking about whether you're going to trust an industrial complex to spend your tax dollars or a parent, we need every member of every community to recognize that they have a stake here. It's not just about, your neighbor's kids. It's about you and your future and your country and your grandchildren. And everyone needs to get involved in advocating for really good quality schools, whether they're public, whether they're private, really parents as stakeholders driving that conversation need to be supported. You brought up learning pods. I'll give you an example. In Tennessee, we had moms that wanted to start learning pods, and they did. It was a struggle to find places to hold them. There was a lot of, it was during COVID, of course, but then there was still a struggle to find places to hold them because there was a lot of pressure from people who do not like the idea of school choice and of learning pods being created. And what we found was, even in the locations where we were able to set up learning pods, there was constant problems that were created and reports made to local law enforcement and officials regarding fire codes and capacity codes, and just, and here are, groups of 10 parents who just want to make sure that their kids aren't missing out on a school year. So, it really is going to take a lot of courage in communities, and that means everyone in the community, not just the parents, again, the professionals, the people who own businesses, everyone, because we need everyone to help us.
Absolutely. And you can help at different phases of your life doing different things. Tiffany, one of your, I'll say, I think board members actually, and an advisory board member for the Education Freedom Center, Erica Donalds, served on a school board in Florida. But now she has launched a network of classical charter schools. So she tried the school board thing. She recognized the limitations of the impact that you can have in that role. And now she's creating new and really exciting educational options. And they're growing. She's creating more and more around the state and beyond. So I hope that women listening will realize that there might be something that you can do right now, which is find an alternative option for your kid. Get involved with your local Moms for Liberty chapter. Independent Women's Forum has the Independent Women's Network, and we have chapters as well. Get involved with the work of parents defending education. Maybe that's what you do now, but maybe, like Erica, down the road, you create new educational options. We don't need to limit ourselves to just what exists right now. And I guess I'm preaching to the choir because you two created large, really high impact organizations. So thank you for doing that. On the school board question, though, what do you think? Should that be the next step for a lot of parents? Should they be running for school board?
You asking me? The answer is going to be yes. I think absolutely. It's like one of the biggest things you can do to create change in your community. It's the most local representation you have. It's about the future of what your community looks like. And it's a great experience, to be honest with you. Just a plug to run for school board. It's not easy, but you learn a lot about education and you learn a lot about your community. You really understand and learn about what people in your community need, how you can get involved and partner. Schools need to focus on education, but that doesn't mean that outside organizations can't be highlighted as a resource for people to go to. It doesn't need to be in the school, but you can address issues that you see. And the bottom line is, what we see around the country is that kids aren't doing great in school. Mm-hmm. And we all need to work together to make that happen. So yeah, run for school board. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, but school board's a lot of fun.
Nikki, what would you recommend as like a next big step for moms or interested parents to do? Run for school board, launch a new school. What else?
Yeah, all those things. I mean, this is like an all hands on deck. I think, we have gotten to where we are in America for a myriad of reasons. And so there is, as a result, not a silver bullet solution. And so, we need, there's the micro schools, there's the pods, there's virtual learning, which, works for some kids and doesn't work for others. I was talking to a family recently that said, our child is autistic, was bullied, and actually thrived during virtual school. It didn't work for my kindergartner, but for different kids, everybody has different needs. And I think parents are really realizing that now. And so I would encourage people, submit tips to us, because sunshine is the best disinfectant. Expose the bad teachers, the bad actors. We released a research report last year looking at the diversity consultant industry that has infiltrated schools across the country, millions and millions of dollars. Those are our tax dollars that are being spent sowing division, putting hateful lessons and ideas in teachers and students' minds. That's not how I want my tax dollars spent. Right now, my kid's elementary school has classrooms outside that are in trailers. Why are we spending money on this and not that? Officials should be held accountable for their decisions. And so, even just going into the school board meeting and expressing concerns about how they are doing their job. at the end of the day, I know some school board members, there was one in York, Pennsylvania that wrote an op-ed saying, I don't work for you. You do work for us, and we will hold you accountable. The end.
Before we wrap up, I want to delve into a topic that we'd all rather that we didn't have to talk about right now, but we have to because it's an emergency and it's an urgent issue that needs to be addressed, and that is the widespread indoctrination of gender ideology that's happening in schools today. This is something that seems to have come upon us quickly, but perhaps it hasn't. Perhaps this has been coming for a while, and Parents Defending Education has put together some resources. I encourage everyone to go learn more about what's happening with schools with gender ideology by going to the Parents Defending Education website. In addition to what you see on the screen, there are a number of very specific resources that can be accessed there that explain this. So many parents are aware that K-12 school lessons and materials and trainings are influenced influenced by critical race theory. Not as many might be aware of this gender ideology influence. So Nikki, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you all have been seeing and what kind of reports you're getting from around the country?
Sure. I mean, even from our tip line, last year when we started, nearly everything we got in was related to race. This year in 2022, 50% of our reports are actually about gender ideology. A lot of schools coast to coast. This is not just a California and Manhattan phenomenon. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in red states. It's in the middle of the country. It's in private schools. Schools have these things called gender support plans where there is your child expresses curiosity, has a question, says, I might be XYZ. Often some of those ideas are frankly planted in children's heads at a very, very young age. Children, seek approval. They want to make their teacher happy. They say, I think I'm this thing. And then suddenly your child is off on a path without parental notification. Children are transitioned. They're given, separate sets of medical records. Some schools have clothing closets. They give out chest binders. I mean, really intrusive, invasive things that are being done without parents having any idea what's going on. And I mean, back to Tiffany's point about, parental consent, parental involvement, these are our children. If something is going on with my child, if my child has a question, if my child is really inquisitive about these things, that's a conversation that we should be having at home, not something they should be having with their math teacher and their guidance counselor. And I think, unfortunately, as we see parents who have said, this might just be a phase, or, I'm not really sure if this is a thing. We're now seeing state agencies step in and say, well, if you're not supportive, if you're not affirming, we're going to take your child from you. And, parents are very rightfully scared about that. And so we're in a very scary regulatory environment right now. And it's about to get worse because of the Biden administration's forthcoming Title IX rules. But I think, this is the kind of thing where if more parents knew that their school districts had policies saying you don't have a right to know how your child identifies him or herself, more families would be pulling their kids out of school, because this is not the relationship. This is not how we envision this relationship with our schools. And that's why, one of the many reasons I think trust between families and schools is very, very frayed. And it's going to take quite a lot of work to rebuild that trust, because they have let us down at every turn over the past 2 years. And I don't see signs of that letting up anytime soon.
Tiffany, what are you all seeing with gender?
Just that it's widespread, like Nikki said, it is all over the country. What we're seeing is that parents are oftentimes the last to know. They're in Florida. I know everyone thinks, well, Florida is a free state of Florida, but it's happening here too. And what we're seeing at this very fragile time in kids' lives, and we're speaking specifically, I think, about like rapid onset gender dysphoria. I think right now what we're seeing is a contagion of middle school age girls that are being told that, if you don't feel like a woman or a girl, if your body doesn't, you don't do everything stereotypically the way that a girl should, which sounds like the most regressive thing I've ever heard before. I thought we told girls you could be any type of girl you want, right? You don't have to have long hair and wear a dress. You can do whatever you want as a girl. But it feels like what kids are being told is there's a right way to be a girl or a boy. And so at this time in kids' lives, when they're so fragile in that relationship of a mom of four, I know what it's like to raise middle school kids, that the school is driving a wedge between the parent and the child feels like one of the biggest violations that could ever possibly happen. And it's not something that we can kind of be like, oh, well, it'll pass. These are real serious health concerns that are happening with these kids, and kids are being encouraged to make medical decisions that change them, as Abigail Schreier said in her book, irreversible damage that you would need a time machine to go back and change. And in effect, Ginny, kids being sterilized, which is just shocking. So, moms and dads are really concerned about that. They are empowered to speak when they are educated about the issues. And so having resources like Parents Defending Education that are solid, that put out vetted information regarding issues is really important, because once moms get it, once they see that, you're not a bad mom if you're not affirming that it is okay, right? That Florida just issued new treatment for gender dysphoria. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it, because it went against some of the things that we're hearing about medical affirmation in America right now, or what's being pushed. But once you give parents that information, once they see the books that are in the library, once they hear what's actually happening to other kids, parents will do anything to protect their children. And I think that's why you see Moms for Liberty growing the way that we have, why you see Parents Defending Education have the success that they have had, because parents are hungry for honest information and for places to go so they can build a community of trust.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to, again, put out faith-based private schools. We know a lot of these divisive ideologies are still very much embedded in some of the NAIS elite private schools. That's a tiny, tiny portion. I think 3% of all private schools across the country. Most private schools are faith-based private schools and can be safe places for families who are concerned about these issues. But these issues shouldn't be in public schools. So thank you both to what your organizations are doing to push back. And I will continue to tackle these issues from the Education Freedom Center perspective as well. So final question, what happens next? Do you all think that the parents who have been frustrated with COVID era school policies and with these radical ideologies and concerns with things showing up in school libraries, which we haven't tackled as much today, like are these frustrated parents going to are they going to advocate for education freedom? We know that they're asking their school boards for transparency. We know that sometimes they're running for school boards. Will they, in the next round of legislative sessions next year, do you think that they might start testifying before state legislatures and say, hey, we need more options. We need to be able to put pressure on the public school system by saying we'll leave. We need an option to pull our kids and leave. We need school choice. Are they going to turn into school choice advocates? What do you think, Tiffany?
I am bullish. I think yes. I mean, I think last year was the year that the scales fell from a lot of parents' eyes. They got smart about these issues. They realized what the heck was taking place. This year, we have a lot of inquiries from parents. All right, what do I do? I want to do something about it. Now they know, and now they're mad, and they want to do something about it. And so, I think if we're not getting the answers that we want, then parents will demand choice, because my kid can't wait for a bill to pass in 10 years. My children are in second grade right now. We need to do something about this right now. There are not enough spaces in private schools in Northern Virginia. There are no charter schools in Northern Virginia. I can't wait for this. And so if it's not happening, I'm going to go make something happen.
Awesome. Tiffany, what do you think? Are you seeing school choice warriors rise up through the Moms for Liberty chapters?
I think we're seeing patriots rise up through the chapters. What I think you're seeing is that parents recognize that this fight is bigger than all of us. This is a fight for the survival of America. And so I don't think that we stop here. I don't think that parents get frustrated and walk away. I think we've seen a government that does not work well without us. And we have been very busy focused on the things that are most important to us, which is our family. And we have invested a lot of time and attention in those things, our jobs, our families, our community, and our life, and not so much in this area. And so, yeah, I think you're going to see parents, as you said before, creating new schools, creating new options, putting pressure on legislators to create better policy that protect parental rights and that create more choice for families.
Awesome. All right. Well, there is so much happening in K-12 schools, and thankfully both of you are keeping parents informed and engaged. So thank you so much, Nikki Neely with Parents Defending Education, Tiffany Justice with Moms for Liberty, for all that you're doing and for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. You're pretty awesome too, Ginny. I just want to say you have been a true warrior, and we just are thankful for you and your leadership.
Oh, I appreciate that. All right, parents, please stay engaged. In addition to following the work of the Education Freedom Center, you can be part of the conversation on our members-only platform, the Independent Women's Network. I'm a member and I'm a regular contributor on the network as the host of the Escaping Your Government Assigned School weekly interview series. Each week, I speak with women like Nikki and Tiffany who are advocating for education freedom, women who are creating new education options, and women who are fighting to protect, preserve, and improve the public school system. So if you aren't a member of IWN, we encourage you to visit iwnetwork.com, and you can activate a free pass membership or select another level that's right for you. So I hope to see you all on the network. Thank you all for watching, and please stay tuned for more events like this from IWF.